Okay, good afternoon to everyone. I was asked by Honza to introduce our today's guest because Honza will leave during the seminar. And it's my pleasure to introduce Lars Hillström from University of Gävle in Sweden. And Lars will speak about Capercaillie, the very famous birds. But before he started to work on Capercaillie, he did his PhD on flycatchers, and then he also worked on other birds, especially on their behavior, and he moved towards conservation topics, and currently he's involved in several European projects on conservation biology, and within these projects I guess he worked also on Capercaillies, so please, we are happy to have you here, and
thank you.
Enjoy the
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to get to Masaryk University. I was here actually on Erasmus exchange in spring of 2019. Was supposed to come back here in 1 year, but you know what happened? The pandemic. So finally I'm here again. And at that time I went with George to Beskid Mountains to study insects. And also went with yours to different places. Tomorrow we're going to see some bats in some caves. This talk I will divide it into 4 parts because it's like 4 studies. But it all started in 2009 with a student from Masaryk University, Klara Mensikova. Then came the pandemic and we couldn't continue, but in 2022 I had a student from Uppsala University, Daniel Lake, continue with the study. And then in 2024, last year, I had a student from Mexico, Natalia, and then this year I had a student from Parma. So it will be divided into 4 different parts. And the background to this, Klara Mensikova came to Sweden, wanted to do a course that we call research practices that she took. But came from an idea from early studies we had on to study possible predation of wild boar on wader wader species that are laying their nests on the ground. And in that study we mimicked eggs with quail eggs and studied the predation of them. And we get some interesting results. For example, that wild boar maybe is not the most important predator on the eggs. So, when Klara came to Sweden, we thought, okay, now we're going to study Capercaillie. So here you see the Capercaillie, the male. And just as an introduction, it's the world's largest species of grouse, ground nesting species, conifer forest in Europe and Asia. It's a select breeding species, which means that adult males gather in a specific area, known as a lek, engage in displays of females. And they have a strict need for all-growth forest with open canopy, rich bilberry cover, which is important for raising chick. We will come back to this strict need for all-growth forest in the discussion. These conditions are associated with high invertebrate abundance, where they take the chicks. And also, presence of a Capercaillie in a forest can be a good indicator of structural mixed biodiverse forest. Here you have some basic facts about the Capercaillie. Large forest ground nesting grouse, selecting species. Males are quite much larger than the females, 4.1 relative to 1.8 kilos. They can mainly feed on pine needlings during the winter and in insects, worms, seeds, leaves, various other types of the year. This that they feed mainly on pine needles means that they could survive quite good in Sweden because we have about 66% of the land area is forest. And Capercaillie is also called what we call an umbrella species. Species with a large area requirements, and protecting of these species, you also protect other species, share the same habitat. And yeah, many conservationists or people that are really Capercaillie lovers, they say that modern forestry is behind its decline, mainly because of habitat loss or habitat fragmentation. And I guess this holds for many countries in Europe, including Czech Republic. But in Sweden, as we'll come back, maybe this is not super true that they need all forests, but yeah, this is part also of this talk. So this is like a typical Capercaillie habitat. See mainly in all coniferous forests with a dense band of vaccinium species, blueberries, and you can see here also where we did this experimental test, putting out eggs to mimic the Capercaillie nest. So in the boundary here, in the background, you can imagine an old mire. That's the place where the female take the chicks, the nestlings. And the species is classified as least concern, but listed in Annex 1 of Your Birds Directive. And the conservation strategy is to prepare its habitat. And despite this, the global population is slightly declining, which means that new members are required to implement more conservation measures to decrease its decline in southern Europe. However, in Sweden, according to standard rules that we have for Swedish taxation, where people go out and have different quadrats that they do inventory of, the population has a significant increase from 1.2% between this year, 1998 to 2023. And several factors have been suggested to be the cause of decline, and it include habitat loss, fragmentation, predation, climate change, human disturbance. But some studies have indicated that predation is the dominant factor limiting Capercaillie, particularly during incubation and chick stages. And ground nesting species are more vulnerable to predators like the red fox, pine marten, and avian predators like corvids and raptors. So, in our study from the beginning, we thought that wild boar could play a significant role in southern areas, especially in Sweden. I will show you a map here soon. And in all the different 4 studies that we will go through, we have used artificial nests. So we have eggs that we have painted a little bit, and we also made plaster eggs. And having this approach, you will, it's easy to get a larger sample size, and you can plan more or less complex experiments. The reverse is to try to check naturalness, which is, I think it's extremely difficult to do the same kind of studies. Yeah, but we can say, however, it may not fully represent natural conditions. And also it is mentioned that the human observers can influence the intensity of predation. So, for example, going there, putting out this net, maybe we are viewing like a scan trail, or creating a path. Of course, if you go there many times, you create a path. Or making the nest visible to predators. Like maybe there is a crowd there looking at you when you put out eggs. This shows the study area that we used in all studies. So here is Gävle, the University of Gävle here. Somewhere down here is Stockholm, so we can navigate. And here you see the 7 different plots that we used. So the idea from the beginning was to use 2 plots more in the north, which is north of Gävle, somewhere around here, where we know that the wild boar hasn't got that far. They follow more or less what we call Limes norrlandicus in Sweden, which is more or less this area as you see here, these plots here, goes something like this in the country. And yeah, terrain, flat, gentle lowering, shrub layer, we have heather, filberry, lingonberry, etc. Ground covered with mosses and ferns and lichens. And here you see like where they nest, and this is below here is more like a overgrown mire where they take the chicks. And the study design that we started when Clara was in Sweden, we prepared eggs, chicken eggs. So we had 2 real eggs, 2 cluster eggs. And in total we have 7 nests per plot, 49 nests. So it get a lot of eggs. And we use a GPS to record every nest you have. So this is how you prepare the cluster. You make a hole, take out the egg yolk and so on, and take a plaster there you see in the gips here, and try to inject it in the eggs, which is easier said than done. And then it will result in an egg like that. So then we can also follow if there is a biting marks on the eggs. So this is a Clara Mensikova from Masaryk. Started this experiment in 2019. And the preliminary title of that study will be Capercaillie effects of predation and reproduction experimental test. And also a colleague from University of Cordoba was in this study, Antonio Carpio. So the idea was to investigate potential predators like wild boar and birds, fox, badger. These were suspicious predators. And propose mechanisms that we think that they can be attracted to the nest by the observer, are leaving a scan trail, treading a path, destroying foliage around the making nest more visible, causing the parents to behave in a way that attract predators, actually leading predators to the nest. And to find these places in the beginning, the plots, we had contact with local ornithologists to find sites, plots where there was Capercaillie leks. Where there are Capercaillie leks, then there are also females nesting there. So this shows a potential place for actually Capercaillie lek. It's a little bit higher in the terrain. You can see the surroundings here, and there the males get together for the lek, and the female are visiting the leks. Just to be sure that that are still there, confirmed by Capercaillie droppings, as you see here. And presence or absence of wild boar, we look for this rooting, as you see here. It's quite obvious when you have wild boar in the terrain. How many people here in this room have seen rooting of wild boar? Can you raise your hand? Oh yeah, good. Yeah, I heard that from Jan. They have also increased in Sweden, in Czech Republic, as in Sweden. Yeah. In Sweden they were exterminated for 200 years, like from 1776 to 1976. Then they have escaped from enclosures, and now there are about 300,000 wild boar in Sweden. So yeah, I said we used the chicken eggs, painted them, and Clara said, yeah, we got a lot of yolk here. So she invited a lot of friends for having tortilla. The field experiment, we made like an artificial nest by making a shallow hole filled with some leaves. 4 eggs, 2 filled with cluster, 2 fresh eggs, and distance between 7 nests in a plot was more or less 100 meters. I had a figure later. 7 different plots, GPS location, I told you. This here you can see how on the 7 different plots how it was located. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 in the different areas. So it was more or less in a row in the different plots. Here you see nests in the field, how we check them. So this is nest 2, plot number 4, nest number 7 and plot number 3. And after we have put all the eggs in the field, we waited for 26 days, which is the average time of incubation for Capercaillie. And then we inspected the nests after 60 days, recording possible predation events, if there was any damage of eggs, partly predated, and if we could identify the predators by looking at the markings on the egg. So, predated or not predated, that is the question. So here, to the left you see fully predated, nothing left. And here's a partly predated. You can see that here has been a bird taking the fresh egg, and here an untouched nest. And yeah, we argued from the beginning, if it was a fully predated nest, this has also been typical in other studies, that wild boar, they just take everything. Wow, they can eat anything. Here you can see the markings on the eggs, which we got help from our Spanish colleague Antonio. He's an expert on this to see which kind of predator it was. So here, for example, you can see bird, crow or a jay, carnivore or rodent. Sometimes we found eggs outside the nest here. It was on a branch here. So that was obviously a bird that has taken that. So the identity of predator, we came to the conclusion is birds, probably a crow or a jay, mammals, fox or badger, as we saw on the, or rodents, or wild boar. So in this particular year, 27 out of 49 nests were predated. And the nests predated were 13 nest plots with wild boar, giving predation of rate of 59.5%, and predation on 16 nesting plots without wild boar. So, not any difference. So total predation rate was about 57% this particular year. And there was no significant effect then between, as you can understand, in relation to wild boar. However, we discovered when we made an analysis that there was a human factor, we call it, that the predation rate was influenced by how many people that were present when we put out eggs. There's no interaction between treatment and human factor, as we can see. But as you can see, there was a significant effect of human factor. And what do we mean by the human factor? Yeah, it's by coincidence this year, it was Clara and me that was doing the main field work. However, once, you remember that he invited a lot of friends for tortillas, so one of the friends came out one time, to put out the eggs. So then we were 3 people. And by coincidence, Clara wanted to visit Finland, so then I had to do the work by myself. So we had 1, 2, 3. And this was what we call the human factors. So when we were more people in the field, then there was a higher predation rate. So the summary from this first study was the most common mammal predator was probably red fox, badger, wild boar. No difference in relation to wild boar, but we have this significant, what we call a human factor. How many people were present during the start of the experiment when we put out the eggs? So we may think that we could do some further research, because some people also say that when humans go to some place, it actually deters the mammal, the predators. They get afraid. But some say that no, they get more attracted. There are some more studies on birds on these from the tropics to say that there's a huge predation rate in the tropics, and if you make experiments there, almost everything is gone. So this leads us to the second study. This is Daniel Lake, student from University of Uppsala, and my daughter, Caroline. So we continue the experiment, but now with a new experimental design. So this made a report. In this course, we have research practices. Introduction to the second studies. I have already said that wild boar have been extinct in Sweden for 200 years. But wild boar are omnivores with a predation Capercaillie nest. And here you can see this, what I talked earlier about, the Limes norlandicus. It's a line that goes from southern tip of Norway here, Atlantic winds that come in like this, that creates this Limes norlandicus. So it's much warmer here in the south than in the north. And Capercaillie are, you have all over Sweden. So method, same as before, using the eggs, placing them out in the field. So Daniel again had to do this, filling the eggs, because many were used. When talking to Antoni, my colleague, he said that, well, this was a coincidence that you have a human factor, but this will not hold for publishing a paper. You have to randomize it. So we randomized this, that 1 to 3 persons, as we had been the year before, to go out and put out eggs. And we also ordered the starting of the experiment, because doing this, going out to these all different places, it takes a lot of time, so we have a sequence of days we do this. So that was also randomized. And here you see where we have the wild boar present. So 3 plots had present of wild boar, 4 not. And the predictions we have is that where we have more people putting out eggs, it leads to a high rate of predation. And that plots with wild boar will have a higher predation rate. We still thought about this. And then we check the nests as before, check the marks on the eggs, then we add the data from the earlier, However, there was not so many predators this year. But if we checked combining the 2 years, there was a significant difference in rate of predation because it was lower in the second year. But still, the number of people putting out the eggs showed an effect on, so the human factor showed an effect on predation. So this shows it in a graph. So it was much higher predation in the first year. And the number of people putting out, it was still significant. So in total, 2 people putting out the nest, it was higher than 3 people. So there was a significant difference in predation between years, but also we call a human effect. How many people were present during the start of the experiment? And 2 years of data shows that no significant difference in amount of predation on plots with wild boar compared to plots without wild boar. So some further research whether human deter mammals or make scans, can we say it's under discussion. And we probably need more experimental study. Maybe use some kind of human scans. I don't know, perfume in the field. See if it attracts predators or deters them. So that leads us to the third study. So this was my master thesis by Natalia de la Peña Calleros, originally from Mexico, and doing a master of science thesis at Uppsala University. And here we are out in the field. This particular area was an enormous amount of mosquitoes when we were recording the nest. So you can see she has a net there on the if you look at the introduction on her thesis, yeah, predation is important, also mortality in Capercaillie. But habitat fragmentation, modern forestry practice can also increase predation pressure. So clear-cutting practices can contribute to the increase. But also, yeah, it could attract more predators to these places. And of course, also have to hand in climate change to have some effects. So her thesis, she said, what are the species that predate Capercaillie? Human visitation to nest increase predation risk. She also checked on land use, habitat diversity, like Shannon index, and in forestry specifically also if an area has been had forestry this year or last year or so. So we have a new experimental design here because we get comments about, yeah, this human effect. What about if you go to the nest, go back, go to the nest again, go back? So we did this, a lot of work, and so we had the same sites or plots, we can call them, and also we had wild boar and some, not, and she got a lot of data from forest monitoring map. And the design then was to go to this some nests. So we randomized 3 nests of 7 nests in each plot and visited them 3 times. So not only laying out eggs, but going there one day and then going back again 3-4 days, etc. So we increased the human factor on this. Yeah, we also visit, so we have selected, for example, number 3, 4, and 5 but then we randomized every time of n-test. So sometimes it was 3, 5, 4, 4, 5, 3, etc. So we randomized as much as we could. Yeah, we also collected additional data from the web, from GBIF and from Artdataportalen, what kind of animals have been recorded in this area. Focused on 2.5 kilometer radio on each site, and had land use data from Lantmäteriet. That is one that has all the maps that you would like in Sweden. And they use landscape ecology statistics to calculate deciduous, coniferous, arable land, etc. around each site. And also use the Shannon and Simpson index, just to check out every possibility that can affect predation. Use this general lineal mixed model that you probably heard about, and in all cases check if the nest was predated, it's 1, if not predated, it's 0. And did also some technical residual diagnosis, Capercaillie information. I can talk about that later. And land use was, for simplicity, divided into coniferous, deciduous, open land, and water, lake, sea, or watercourse. And visits was binary, a number of visits, and land use percentages and clear-cut classification were all considered as fixed factors. So, to the results. So we had 8 nests being predated, so much less also than in the first year. And of these 49 nests, 21 were visited several times, and 4 of them were predated, accounting for 90%. And when nest visited only once, 28, of which 4 were predated, so equivalent to 40% of those nests. So it's a small difference, but not significant. Here you see the possible predators that we used bite marks to identify: badger, wild boar, pine marten, corvid, and some undetermined. And yeah, who are the predators? So in many cases, all 4 eggs were completely removed from the nest and remains were not found, making us unable to determine the predators. And this is actually just copy and paste from Nathaniel's thesis. So, because removing the artificial eggs requires a certain size, strength, it was considered that they were predated by mammals. Thus, taking into consideration observation made in the field, combined with egg remains and predator observations, it is suggested that predation was done by mammals and only once carried out by a bird. And only in 2 nests we found sufficient marks to identify the predator. But we find marks, but we could not, securely identify. Here you see some of the eggs that we found. You see the bite marks, and we could identify them to badger or fox or others. So here we see some of the analysis, and you should look on the peak values. None of these are significant, number of visits, clear-cut forest, clear-cut old. So if we have all this in an analysis, there was no significant effect. And also this shows that the number of visits shows a positive estimate, suggesting a very slight increase in predation with more visits, but it's not statistically significant. And what about the land use? So does the land use affect predation rate. So we had coniferous deciduous open land, and again no significant effect of land use. Open land has a small negative effect on predation, whereas C shows a positive effect, but none of them are significant. And we also checked on habitat diversity. So overall negative relationship between habitat diversity measured by the Shannon Diversity Index, but not statistically significant. And what about forestry or not forestry? If we separate them from the analysis. So we classified the plots according to 3 categories. Forested, if the nest were in an area not disturbed by forestry. All, if the nest was in an area where there has been some forestry in early years. And current, if the nest was located close to a site where there was forestry. So this was a little bit challenging for us when you come out there and you saw the forest machine going on there in close to where we used to put the nests. But they were never actually in the area. So here you see estimated predation probability on the y-axis and the different categories. So current forestry done when we came to the site, forested area where there has not been no forestry, and all means that there have been forestry 1 year earlier or 2 years earlier. And it actually shows that there is a significant effect between old and old clear-cut forest and forested area. As you see here, it's close to significant, but it is significant. P is less than 0.05, and then it's significant. If we go back there, you see here that there is a significant difference then between the old one and the forested one. There is quite a big overlap here between the current forestry, and so that's not significant between them. But the general trend here that forestry actually affect. And the causes why forestry can have importance for predation is it creates more open areas, and it may be easier for predators to spot things, maybe specifically for avian predators because they move around. So who are these predators? And that leads us to the fourth and final study in this presentation. So this was done this summer. And a student from the University of Parma, Mariana Kiko. We are now in a European alliance of 9 universities, what we call EU Green, and University of Parma is one of them. So now, now we want to know who are these predators. So we used camera traps that we put very close to the nest and try to identify who are the main predators. And we also studied other environmental factors. So we had 3 cameras per plots. We have indefinite amount of cameras. Put them about 1.5 meters from the nest. And the monitoring period early May to early June, like 26 days. And after 26 days, we checked the nest. So there you can probably see the camera trap, and the nest is here. So cameras were collected after the study period, analyzed the memory cards, and also we had environmental descriptions for each site. And we also had the same as before, checked if the wild boar presence based on routing and on scouts. So here we see some overview of the different predators. It's 10:42 there. It was because, you know, there was one plot missing here. We had 6 plots in this particular year, because for putting out the camera, you need to call the owner, and one of them didn't get us access. So we had 6 plots. And we could identify the predators. So we also had this, where we didn't have the camera, we could look on the marks on the eggs. And where we had the cameras, we could also look on marks on the eggs if they were left. And here you see one of the predators. Can you see what it is? Badger, yeah. So this is a badger going there, robbing the nest. And we collected data also on all nests and checked the remains. Another predator up there to the right. I think there are some more pictures here. Yeah, here you see the other predators. You can see how they take eggs there. And they're going away with eggs. So this was a behavior that we observed, because they came to the nest, there were 4 eggs, so they took 1 egg, moved away, come back, take the other eggs. So this was one of the predictions we had from before. It must be a mammal predator that can remove the eggs. However, here's another predator. Do you know what species it is? Raven, yeah. So this is a raven. Also doing the same as actually as the marten, taking 1 egg, flying away, coming back, taking another egg, etc. We saw a fox, but actually we didn't see it take any eggs in any of these plots that we have camouflaged. And this is actually one plot that we call plot number 7. Because that was the name from earlier. And you can see that this has been, they have done forestry, they have not clear cut, but from one year to another, this habitat looked completely different. When I came back, so this was a study when Natalia, so the 3rd year study, it looked like this. So it actually increased the openness when they have forestry. This is the same plot, but different nest, and you can see the intact forest. You have much more shrubs and so on. And this is actually a nest that was untouched inside this forest. Here you can see also the analysis of if there was a relationship to forestry, and if nothing, something. There's no effect on this particular year, and no effect on wild boar also. So if there was wild boar in the area, it accounted for 18% of predation, but overpredation was lower in this area, 54 to 80.7 of the ones that were predated. And the presence of wild boar also appeared to reduce predation by badgers and foxes, that we have seen also in other studies. So badgers prey much more in areas without wild boar. And that was what we showed in our study earlier on quails, that in areas where there was wild boar, there were actually quite much lower predation rate on the nest there were wild boar. So in this fourth study, we could see that most important predators was badger, marten, and raven, and maybe it could be mean that they have easy to observe the artificial nest when there have been some kind of forestry. But we need more studies to compare maybe with other countries, maybe in Czech Republic. So in conclusion from these four studies, we have mammalian predators, marten and badger that we've seen, wild boar. We didn't find any photo of wild boar at all, although we know them were there. And we can speculate that there could be some effect on forestry. So, as an overall conclusion, for all the four studies, we can say wild boar is a potential predator on Capercaillie. However, there was no significant difference between areas containing wild boar with those that have no presence of wild boar. And forestry, you can say, seems to increase predation on artificial nest, and the human factor, relation to the, in this case, number of people visiting the nest, seems sometimes to have effect. But of course, we should need more studies, more experimental studies to address these questions. Maybe some different human scans, perfume. And also, the main predators are badger, marten, and raven in our study. And yeah, as I said, we didn't get any photo from wild boar. But we've seen in other studies, when we have more open landscapes where wild boar also like to go, we have seen that there can be predators. So there could be a number of factors that affect the predation on Capercaillie, like forestry, wild boar. Maybe just we are going there and putting out the nests. And we can reveal this most efficiently, I think, by using camera traps. So, some suggestions on further research. Maybe we can think about restored habitats, especially within southern Europe or Central Europe, where we have lost a lot of Capercaillie. We can check in restored habitats to identify predators if there will be less predation, for example. And also we have a number of invasive species that have spread in Europe that could also affect Capercaillie success. And if you have some suggestions. Thanks for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Lars, for interesting talks on a species that is very rare in Czech Republic, in fact. So, still quite common in Sweden.
Yeah, I think that there are. I just read a short report of an evaluation of the Capercaillie in Sweden, Finland, Norway, and to the ecosystem services, of course, spreading of seeds. It's also prey for predators, of course, but also a big ecosystem service is always recreation, and there is a lot of hunting on Capercaillie. So many thousands are killed in hunting every year. But the population in Sweden seems to be stable. If you look on a local area, it often looks like this. But in a national level, it looks like this. And as I said from the beginning, from 1998 to 2023, there was a small increase.
Yeah, we have time for questions.
Yeah.
Hello. Thank you for a very interesting talk. I made very similar experiments several years ago here in Czech Republic on cartridges. And my suggestion for you is I used for predation marks wooden bead with model clay fixed by fishing
Oh yeah, so that they cannot remove it.
Yeah, okay. And I have one question. In my experiment, quite common predator was hedgehog. Did you mention some hedgehogs in Sweden?
Oh, wow, good question. No, the closest is rodents, but of course they are not insectable. So no, but we actually didn't see any hedgehogs in these areas. They have decreased a lot also in Sweden.
Yeah, hedgehog. And also I saw quite fetish of rodents to model clay. They just biting into model clay, but not eggs. Maybe your plastic eggs also be sorry for that. Also could be more attractive.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah.
So
Well,
maybe not just only persons, but just artificial eggs could be attractive for predators.
Yeah. So it could be easy to see the biting marks, for example. Yeah. That's a good suggestion. I write that.
Because I would like to ask, did you find any differences in predatory rate between these two types of eggs? Because you said you had 4 eggs per nest and 2 types of them. So could you find any just field and non-field, or natural and non-natural?
Yeah, actually, where there was where there were eggs left in the nest, it was the clay eggs actually. Then they had taken the fresh eggs. Yeah.
And the second question is related also to that differences. At the beginning you had 7 localities. Did you find any differences between the localities in predatory rate?
Yeah, actually, so in this area that I showed the picture where there's more open, there was a higher predation rate there, so it's and now when we have the camera traps there, if you should like add those years together, which I have not done here, it will probably be a significant effect of forest as we saw before between. And it's complicated this with the age of the forestry, because one could think about that. Yeah, if there is forestry, then there will be more open. However, the presence of these machines, I think, probably deter the predators. Like, for example, Capercaillies can be scared if you're going to visit the lakes, for example. If you scare them, it can take a week before they come back again. And I think the same thing can happen with humans affecting badgers and foxes with these big machines. However, the next year after there is no more machines there, but the area is now completely different. And it's a huge difference, even if they have left a lot of trees and not taken down everything, which is a good forestry, I think. However, it affects the habitat very much for many species. Yeah?
Do you know about the population rates of actual nests, like real nests with Capercaillies on it, or is there studies, or do you plan to look at it?
Yeah, I've seen that there could be like at least 50% predation on real nests. Yeah, but it's a good question, because if you think about real nests, then you have the female there, even though she is as big as the male. She could probably defend the nest at least against ravens. Maybe she will be afraid of a badger, but the raven, she could probably scare them away. But I have seen figures from naturalists, at least 50%.
Question related to that, because I remember in your experiments on great partridges, so when they when the female leaves the nest, they cover it by some leaves.
Yeah.
So the eggs are not visible. So is it the same in Capercaillie? So when the female leaves the nest for some short period, so do they cover the eggs by some leaves or by some materials?
Yeah. Take some pine bark or leaves. Yeah.
Because on your picture, so the eggs were visible always.
Yeah.
So I don't know how, to what extent it really simulates the natural situation. Or not.
Yeah, we actually thought about that and just put scraps like this and put it over the nest just to imitate that. Mm-hmm. But after a while, this will blow away. That could actually be a good experiment, to actually to put the things on it so that it is not, so that it's always covered. Mm-hmm. Yeah, one new experiment. Good.
I have one additional question.
Yeah.
You said, and you presented that you did not find any differences between the localities with wild boar population and without.
Yeah.
At the same time, you had any pictures of wild boar.
Yeah.
Could we say that wild boar is really potential predator, or we're repeating only what we think, but the evidence is something else?
Yeah, it's a very good question again, because when we did the study on imitating wading nests, so Tringatotanus or other species that we know nests in this landscape, mosaic landscape with the agriculture, maybe some small stream and forest. When we did that experiment to imitate also Vanellus vanellus, we also had some cameras and we could observe wild boar. However, in this study, also most of the marks on the nest that we saw was from badger and from fox and sometimes from rodent. And we just thought earlier that when everything was gone, we thought this could be wild boar. That was just an assumption. However, maybe now, when we have had the camera traps and we have no wild boar, maybe we could conclude that all the prediction we had before, that everything was gone, must have been a wild boar, because we know that they are like, how do you say it, barshak, no? They just take everything and go on. But maybe in that case it could also have been badger, marten, because we have seen how they do. They go there, or raven, take away the eggs, and then when we come there, it's nothing. So it could be. Yeah.
So I have a question about the predation. Do you think it's like more severe on the eggs or the hatchlings, the chicks? Like, is there more predation going on with the nest, the eggs?
I think.
Is there any studies like?
No, but I think the most predation is on the eggs actually, because they are so susceptible on the ground. And sometimes the female probably need to leave the nest and do some foraging. But the nestlings, they go with the mother, and I think they are quite invisible. They go with the mother in the vegetation and take insects and so on. But I don't know any studies that have compared them. Well, good question.
They are moving, so they can be also visible by different types of
predators. Yeah, it could be, for example, that some hawks, sparrowhawks that can hunt in the forest, or.
So you think the mortality is like biggest when they are like still in the eggs?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Them look
as
much as possible. Because the females are actually on the eggs, do you think it has some sort of effect on the predation rates, or is it just to make to similar?
No, we just, I've seen the real eggs from Capercaillie. So we bought these eggs that are brown because, and then
do you think
we
it
did.
has a, like, predators are more likely to eat it, or they would maybe ignore it because they don't know chicken eggs, or
Yeah.
I think they would probably predate it anyway.
Yeah, we did this for camouflage reason, but yeah, of course it could be related to that maybe they don't like these painted eggs. So yeah, it is possible to study it. You can compare ones that are not painted with painted ones, or also even. We use now brown eggs only because they are more camouflage. One could also use like white chicken eggs. Yeah, and maybe paint them totally to see. Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a following question because I was part of the research on strikes, on predation, and it was kind of similar. And yeah, we used 3 types of eggs in strike nests, and one was the clay one, so that was pretty interesting. One was strike egg from like left nests, and one was quail egg. And there were some interesting results that, like, what type of egg the predators chose. So it could be interesting to do something similar to see whether there are or are not some differences between them.
So you mean comparing fresh eggs with?
Yeah, for example, or as Ila said, that different, like, painted differently if it has some sort of difference between it.
Yeah. That's it's possible to make that experiment. Sure.
So one of your conclusions was that when the wild boar was present, so the predation rate was lower in general. So how you would explain this result? So is there any competition between wild boars and badgers? So for example, the density of badgers is lower than predator?
You know, that was what we concluded in our first study when we used the quail eggs. But the editor in the journal didn't accept it. That we said that the wild boar is having competition with badgers, so badgers avoid areas. So they say, then the editor said, no, this could be because of other reasons. That the badger is not present where the wild boar is because of habitat. But yeah, I think that should be a very interesting study. However, then you need probably GPS collars, or you need to monitor, because the wild boar is not present in all areas of year after year. They move around, so they can be very locally distributed.
Are there any data about density of Capercaillie in southern Sweden, where the density of wild boars is quite high, I would say, and in northern Sweden, when there are no wild boars? So is there any direct effect of wild boars on density of Capercaillie, or?
Because there are so many other things that could affect the Capercaillie in the south, because we have so much more cultivation in the south. So
in general, the density of Capercaillie is higher in northern Sweden?
Yeah. And also the density of Capercaillie of wild boar has also a southeasterly distribution, which is also actually related to where they escaped from the beginning. So there was a nucleus in the south of Stockholm where they have spread and southeast in Sweden, and then a nucleus in Scania in southern Sweden where they have dispersed north. But it's like, if you look on the density of wild boar, they are more distributed to to the east of Sweden. And that's also where there's less people, there is a lot more forest and agriculture mixed. In the western part it's more agriculture.
Yeah. So it's not probably a good idea to increase the density of wild boars in Schuhauer Mountains to decrease the predation rate on the Capercaillie.
No. Oh yeah. 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 Is this wild boar population in Czech Republic stable, or is it continuing?
I think it's increasing. There are now everywhere in really high densities, and the hunters, they even don't like to beat them now.
Okay. Yeah, because in Sweden, at least if you ask the hunters, Swedish Hunters Association, they say that now we have a stable population, about 300,000. However, there are other species that are increasing. That is now like what they call a pest, the fallow deer. Yeah.
I was just wondering, in one photo you had moose.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, did you happen to capture something like the moose or something else similar to him, like destroying accidentally your nests, or?
No. I think it's the moose. You just need to put up a camera trap anywhere in the forest, and after a while you get a moose, because they are quite common. Even though they have decreased the latest 10 years or so, because the forestry agencies say that we need to decrease the moose because they eat too much of the pine needles in the winter. They can devastate the big areas. So. But that's another story.
Yeah. No more questions. I don't see any raised hand. So thank you once again for your talk and discussion.
And thank you for coming.